Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Dux-Soup webinar. In this webinar, Giles Garnett, the Head of Professional Services, will show you the easy way to triple your LinkedIn leads. We have a live chat during this webinar, and it's being monitored by Jen Kuzminskaite, the Head of Customer Support, which is me. And at the end of the webinar, we will have Q&A with Giles. Thank you so much for joining us today, and let's start our webinar.
Hello and good morning, good afternoon or good evening to you wherever you are in the world, and thank you for joining us for today's in the latest of the series of Dux-Soup webinars. My name is Giles. Many of you will have heard from me before, and I'm Head of Professional Services here at Dux-Soup. And you've just heard from Jen, who is our Head of Customer Support. As you're probably aware, I've been presenting these webinars for the last 3 years or so bring out hopefully a wealth of first-hand experience in lead generation activities. I also run a lot of the support calls and the consultations calls, so I'll bring all of that knowledge that I've gathered over that time in these webinars. Today we're going to look at the main things which I believe should be underpinning your LinkedIn lead generation strategy, with the aim of tripling potentially your LinkedIn leads. If you put the correct focus and effort on these topics, you will find it much easier to unlock the potential of LinkedIn as a resource, which is quite frankly second to none, as most of us are aware. While I'm talking and presenting, please raise any questions you have via the questions box. It's the questions box, not the chat box, I believe, on GoTo here. Yeah, try and put those into the question box, and Jen will do her best to answer those that are applicable. Any that are appropriate, I'll also try and answer at the end of the webinar, so keep those questions on topic. For other Dux-Soup related questions, reach out to our support team via our support website or email info@dux-soup.com. As always, the webinar is being recorded, so anybody who's asked that question just now, yes, you'll get the recording made available to you in the coming hours if you've registered, and also via our website and YouTube channel in the next day or two. So for anyone who's new to Dux-Soup, just in case, there may be a few of you, what is Dux-Soup? Dux-Soup is a Chrome extension which helps you to automate your lead generation activities on LinkedIn, and it works by mimicking human behavior on the platform and gives you the possibility to harness the power of LinkedIn by automating such activities as auto visiting profiles, sending connection requests, sending in-mails perhaps, and even endorsing skills. If you have the Turbo edition of Dux-Soup, you have even more possibilities available, where you can build, edit and track campaigns and enroll your prospects into your campaigns, and even integrate with multiple other platforms. Basically, you select the list of profiles that you want Dux-Soup to process, and you get Dux-Soup to run your chosen activities against that list. And it's incredibly important for me to re-emphasize, from a safety point of view, Dux-Soup mimics the human behavior of you clicking the mouse on the screen. We have the philosophy at Dux-Soup that is the safest way to keep your account as safe as possible on LinkedIn, of course. So we're talking about maximizing our returns for our activities on LinkedIn here. And I've got 2 key points to start with, often forgotten, but do so at your peril. And these all of these things I'm going to talk about today will contribute to improving your success rates on LinkedIn. LinkedIn 101, your profile. It's absolutely of paramount importance that your profile is up to date and relevant. Why is that? Do you think, well, what's the first thing that you do when someone invites you to join their network? You get an invite from somebody out of the blue. What's the first thing you do? Yep, you're probably like me, you visit their profile. You are way more likely to react positively to that request if the information you see there is professional, if it's up to date, and it's appropriate and relevant to you. Additionally to that, be active and present on LinkedIn. Everything you do improves your visibility. So think about everything you're doing, and in line with your profile, think about your tagline. So you see my profile there at the bottom of the screen: experienced coach, trainer, webinar presenter, etc., etc. It's the first 64 characters that people will see of that when you've done something on LinkedIn. So think about that tagline. Maybe you don't want to put just financial consultant or solutions engineer or whatever your job title is. Think about putting a tagline that is relevant to the people who you're targeting. It's really, really important to remember that, and often forgotten by a lot of people. Make use of the background, make sure it's relevant. A lot of people waste that real estate and don't think about it. And I say it repeatedly, and you'll hear it again and again across anybody who does any LinkedIn lead generation activities. Think about your profile and be active on LinkedIn. Those are things that, you know, are the absolute basics here whenever you're doing your LinkedIn lead generation activities. So there was a time a couple of years ago when LinkedIn prospecting was a numbers game. You could send 1,000 connection requests a week, and if you were happy with an 8 to 10% acceptance rate, you'd get 80 to 100 new connections every week, and that would keep you plenty busy enough. Times have changed with regards to this, and I can say that with absolute certainty, if you're not spending a reasonable amount of time finding the correct targets, you are being less efficient in your lead generation activities. So, for example, now we're in a time in the space where you can send a much lower number of connection requests because of LinkedIn little pop-up that says you're out of invites for this week. So maybe if you're now only sending 250 connection requests and you're getting an 8 to 10% acceptance rate, you're not getting very many new prospects. With better targeting, much higher numbers can be achieved. So working alongside one of our clients, working with him about a year or so ago, he went from achieving like a 10% acceptance rate with really good targeting. He was then able to achieve between a 45 and a 50% acceptance rate on a regular basis. Also, finding quality leads means much less wasted time for you. Anybody who you accept your connection request who isn't relevant is just a time waster for you. It might be nice to chat with them, it might be nice to be connected to them, but ultimately, if they're not a lead that's going to result in a sale, you are ultimately wasting your time. So quality over quantity. Remember back 2019, 2020, you could send out thousands of connection requests, a low acceptance rate wasn't a problem. Now, with the tighter controls over your numbers, getting that acceptance rate up is much, much more important. So how do we find those quality leads? So there are a number of things that we talk about, and I talk about these things, I touch on these in pretty much all of these webinars. Use your Boolean search terms in your LinkedIn searches. You can use that in regular LinkedIn, you can use it in Sales Navigator, you can use it in Recruiter. So that's the and, the or, and the not. And you can see that under our blog posts. Most of what I'm talking about here is stuff that's in our blog posts already, and maybe we'll get to some questions and we'll show you where those are. But Boolean search terms can be incredibly powerful in making sure you're finding the right people. And I'll also do a little demo of that towards the end. Target specific LinkedIn groups to find the right prospects. There are thousands of LinkedIn groups. So using the groups to find people with the appropriate knowledge or the appropriate levels, topics of interest, I should say, is really, really important. So make sure you're a member of those groups and be active as well. Make yourself visible. But you can then run Dux-Soup against a list of a group membership. If you're not aware, if you've got Sales Navigator, you can see the population of a group without having to be a member of it. And that's a little thing that a lot of people forget. They don't remember that yet. If you've got Sales Navigator, you don't have to be a member of that group to see the population. If you've just got regular LinkedIn, in order to see the population of a group, you have to be a member of it. Different cultures have different accepted behaviors. So that could be by location or industry. So always use those filters as well to make sure that you're targeting the right sorts of people, whether that's location, industry, company size. And it also links back to messaging as well. And we'll touch on that a little bit later as well about how we're doing all of this. Make use of as many of the filters as you can that are available to you, depending on the platform you've got within LinkedIn, because of course there are the differences between regular Sales Navigator and Recruiter. Make sure you're using as many of those filters as possible to narrow down your target groups. Really, really important. If you come up with a search result that's 50,000 people long, well, first of all, you can't see them all because LinkedIn don't show you that many results. But also 50,000 people, is that a realistic group of people to target? And should you be segmenting them and then also customizing your approach to those people? So try and break down your targets into manageable groups and use the functions within LinkedIn to save your searches, to be able to come back around at them. So filtering and searching is really important, and we will touch on that in a little bit of the demo later. But this is the more work you do this up front, the more success you will have. Whilst you can use the LinkedIn filters there to make sure you're targeting the right people, you can also use some of the functionality of Dux-Soup to make sure you're targeting the right people as well. So, for example, if you're only interested in people who've got big networks already, you have the ability to exclude profiles with fewer than a certain number of connections. So maybe you're not interested in new members of LinkedIn who've got 50 or 100 connections, but you can define that from the drop-down box. So you can decide whether you want mature profiles or not. You can use one of the functions under our skipping rules in Dux-Soup is to be able to exclude certain words from your search. Or I should say, Dux-Soup will skip them if it finds those words. So what we have here, so skip profiles that match pattern there, and all of this code here is available on our website, on our support pages, and indeed in several of our blog posts. This would basically look for anybody who worked at IBM or Microsoft, or had the job role, or had the words financial planner in their job title, or in that section of data that you see on a search result. So you see there, this regex is evaluated against the HTML of the entry of the results list, and this is a really good way to maybe get Dux-Soup to skip competitors and things like that. It's a very, very important thing to make sure you're not targeting the wrong people. Also, you can use in Dux-Soup, there are several other options as well for looking at skipping rules, and we will touch on those when I show you the robot later, maybe. Here, make sure you're skipping profiles you've previously visited. Maybe you don't want to repeatedly visit profiles again and again and again. Maybe you've tagged profiles using Dux-Soup before, and you can also then skip them using the tag skipping tool. There is also, and we'll come back to this a bit later, a very valid option when it comes to lead generation in LinkedIn, where you may want to repeatedly visit the same profile. So bear that in mind when we come on to some of the topics a little bit later as well. So once you've narrowed down your targets, you've got your list, and maybe you've got a couple of hundred people there on your list, and you've been really happy with how you've narrowed them down. You've excluded certain words through the Boolean terms, and you've looked maybe geographically where you're targeting. All of that information should now help you to build your messaging to these people, and that could be your connection request message, or indeed a campaign if you've got Dux-Soup Turbo. So think about how you're then building your connection request message around those targets. Make your message sound natural and be empathetic, right? Just consider how it would feel if you received that message. Always make use of personalization. Don't just send a standard message with no acknowledgement as to who the person is. Depending again on the culture where you live, first name, last name may be appropriate. So always make use of those personalization options, and I'll show you that again when I do demo later. If you're using Turbo with campaigns, please be patient. I see so many people who build a campaign which sends out a message after 2 days, and another one after 2 days, and another one after 2 days. Remember, a lot of people don't log on to LinkedIn every day. So if they accept a connection request from you on a Monday, and maybe they're not logging on for another week, the last thing they want to see from you is 4 messages in their inbox when they log on again. That just looks horrendous. Give plenty of time between your messages. Let people digest the information. Give them time. When you get a message, an unsolicited message or an in-mail or whatever it is you get from somebody, you will go and visit their profiles. Other people do the same. Don't forget that. And also test different messaging and see what works best. This is one of the great things with Dux-Soup. I mean, Turbo campaigns, you can do lots and lots of things there. But if you're well organized with your process and you're building, you're reaching out to different lists of people, try different messages for different groups of people. Maybe invite 20 people with one message and then the next 20 with another message, and then see which works better, see which is more effective. Don't be afraid to try that. One of the things that I often speak to people about is, sometimes just reading your message out loud can make you say, oh yeah, does that sound good, or does it not sound good? Is it you that you can actually hear? Can you hear that message being spoken in a natural way? Remember, with a connection request, you're limited to 300 characters, so you've got to be pretty concise and to the point, but you can at least refer to how you found the person. Hey, I noticed you're a member of this group, or hey, I noticed you have an interest in such and such a subject, or I noticed we've got a so-and-so in common as a mutual contact, for example. There are lots of different ways to be able to explain how you found somebody. You know, I was talking to somebody recently who's recently moved, I think, to the Northwest in the US, and they were building their messaging around, hey, I've just moved into the area and was looking for, and they were looking for certain people in certain industries. So that was something else as a way into looking to how to establish themselves within a new area. Really important. There are hundreds of articles written around this. I'm not going to bore you with any of the psychology any further than I need to, but this is really important. If you send a connection request without a message, it's luck as to whether people respond to it, and it's very much down to whether they click on your profile or not. If you send a message, they are much more likely to accept or at least seriously consider your connection request. So if we talk about different lead generation strategies, we've got the sending a connection request or enrolling into a campaign if you've got Turbo. We won't spend too long on that. One of the things that a lot of people forget about is just visiting profiles. So the second line down here, visit profiles. This is absolutely 100% a valid activity on LinkedIn. Make sure that your privacy settings are correct. So make sure it's visible that people you're visiting them, because then they'll see that you visited them. And we'll come on to that in a second. Make sure that other things you're doing, you're following profiles and you're endorsing skills, you're engaging people on LinkedIn, so you're participating in groups, you're commenting, you're liking things. All of this stuff improves your visibility, and it's kind of the soft stuff which kind of around the outside you think, oh, it's not sending connection requests. Well, it's not all about sending connection requests. Of course, that is the main thing for a lot of people, but think about the whole platform and make sure it's not just sending connection requests, because you need to participate on the platform to improve your visibility. So that's another thing as well. You can also, I mean, I'm not covering in this particular webinar because it's covered considerably by some of our guest presenters, and I've completely forgotten the name, from Tyron especially, talking about posting and making information available to people. So posting is another thing as well, but what I'm trying to do here is to look at what you can do with Dux-Soup, of course. So just visiting profiles, as I mentioned. So the same theory applies as to when you're sending connection requests. You find the right sort of people, you create your list. That can be through a search or whatever, and you just get Dux-Soup to auto visit those profiles. And every time you visit them, if your settings are correct, your privacy settings are correct, they will get a notification that you visited them, and maybe they'll visit you back. And maybe they'll look at your profile and think, maybe this is somebody I want to be connected to. I often see, you know, if I do this with, for example, lead generation or marketing or growth hacking groups, if I visit 100 profiles, I'll get connection requests of between 8 and 10 connection requests per 100 visits I carry out. And that will be different for every population, as it were. But there are all sorts of different lists that you can do this against, and we'll cover that off in a second in the demo as well. So think about, this is in addition to doing your other stuff as well. As I say, combine your activities. So think about the daily limits. Think about your LinkedIn limitations. How much can you do? So how many people are you going to invite or enroll into a campaign per day? So for a lot of people, this number is somewhere between 30 and 50 per day, depending on whether you've got a free account or a paid account. Some people it's a bit more, but that depends upon your profile, what you've done on LinkedIn in the past, whether it's a paid for account, etc., etc. Lots of factors which we cover in some of our blog posts as well. So once you're comfortable with how many people you're inviting or enrolling per day, once those are all done, you can then run visit-only activities against perhaps a different list. Maybe you've got a long list of people which you know, you think, well, yeah, it's not going to cost me anything to go and visit people. It's a low-risk activity. You're not spamming anybody. You're not doing anything like that. you're literally opening profiles. Dux-Soup, of course, gathers their data as you carry out those visits. So all of those things you can do in combination. So think, yeah, okay, between 9 and 10 in the morning, I'm doing all my invites, and then from maybe 11 o'clock after I've done something else, then I'm going to maybe compile a list of maybe 300, 400, 500 people that Dux-Soup's going to go out and visit. Of course, the number of visits you can carry out depends upon the type of account you've got with LinkedIn. There are limits there, but you can look at all of that under our options in Dux-Soup as well. So one thing I was been working with somebody for about 18 months. And when I first started with them, they were very new to LinkedIn and they hadn't done much at all. I think they had about 75 to 100 first degree connections. And they don't want to go out and they don't want to send a lot of invites out to people. But what they've done is they've found key people in their industry and they've looked to see who's connected to them and then literally just gone out and visited their connections that they can see. And doing that alone over that period has increased their network from a very new network of 75 to 100 people. Just through visiting people, their network is virtually at 1,000 now. It's a very hands-off, it's a very low-key sort of organic way of doing it. But some people don't feel comfortable sending out connection requests. Some people aren't quite so direct as that. So for some people, just doing the visits is a really valid activity and can be incredibly useful. And as I say, you can run this against lots and lots of different lists in LinkedIn, which we'll come on to shortly. Right, demo time. Let's get into the demo. So hopefully I'm going to go to here. Anybody who's not sent me a connection request, or anybody who's on the call who wants to send me a connection request, please do. This is my profile here on LinkedIn. Hopefully everybody can see that clearly. Ping me a message, ping me a connection request, and mention Dux-Soup in your message, because then I'm far more likely to accept it a lot quicker. So those who put Dux-Soup in their connection request messages, I will always respond to quicker than people who don't. But yeah, feel free to reach out and send me a request. So when I talked about a Boolean search, if I go to just regular LinkedIn here, I've got one here. So what I've done here is I've done web and designer or crumbs. That's appalling spelling. There we are, web designer or developer. So what I do is here, I can load up my search results. Remember, for Dux-Soup to run, it needs to see a people result. So I then go to my people option here. Let's just move that out of the way. That works with it. Dux-Soup now says ready at your service. Now I've got 6.6 million people here. That's a bit too many to be realistically good there. So what I can do then is I can say maybe here, reduce it down to maybe second degree connections. We'll also show you something in Sales Navigator in a minute as well. See how quickly this works. They were 128,000. So now maybe I want to say narrow it down to my usual location. So let's go local to where I'm based. And there we are. I've now got, with web and designer or developer, I can narrow straight down from 6.6 million. I'm only looking at second degree connections to 239 results. Now I could say, well, that's maybe too small, and I might want to include some third plus connections in there. There you are. I'm still under that 1,000. When I say I'm under that 1,000, that's really key in regular LinkedIn here, because as many of you are probably aware, LinkedIn only show you 100 pages of a search result, and in regular LinkedIn, you only see 10 results per page. If I was to carry out this same search in Sales Navigator, if I click on Sales Navigator here, and it should open the same filter searches. There we are, second and third degree connections. Let's just expand this a second. You can see here I've got lots more different options here. Interestingly, it's only showing me 177. Oh, it's because it's put the pluses in there. That's something I've not seen before. That's obviously LinkedIn. Let's do that. There we go. LinkedIn not transferring that approach. Still only coming up with 177 results. Curious. So I get 1,000 on regular LinkedIn, but only 177 here on Sales Navigator. Maybe I had something else on. No, it doesn't look like it. But anyway, so you can see you get different results on the different platforms here, which is quite curious. I've never seen that before. But yeah, searches on regular LinkedIn. I haven't got a recruiter account here to be able to demonstrate the different filters there. But this is how you can then sort of build your connection, your filters accordingly. I'll get that one a second and see if that reduces it down to 50. Curious. Some of the things you can also do here within Sales Navigator, of course, you can look at, for example, the companies, the functions, and you can specifically exclude things as well. One of the other ones here is this one, people you've interacted with previously. So you can remove people that you've viewed or contacted before from your search result. And that's really, really handy as well. So play around with the search criteria there to really narrow down your searches. Now, for anybody who's then not sure what you do as to how you run Dux-Soup from here, what you'll see is that the Dux-Soup icon's turned green. It means it's ready. It's found a list of people on the screen that it wants to reach out, that it can reach out to. You then click on your Dux-Soup icon here, and then you choose your activity here. So if I wanted to, for example, send a connection request to these people with a message, I would put my message in here, or I'd go to my options and define that, and I can hit visit and connect. If I just want to visit them, I don't want to send them a connection request, I can just hit the visit profile button here. And then Dux-Soup starts from the top of the page and runs through it, following all of the rules, which we'll show you further on. If you've got Turbo, you can just click the enroll profiles to enroll people into your chosen campaign. So those are the different things that you can do there. There's also scanning, but we'll talk about that another time, perhaps with a different webinar. So this way, this is how you can run Dux-Soup against your list once you've defined it. Some other lists that you can run Dux-Soup against, and again, we can talk about, I can refer you to some other webinars that we've done before. If I go back to my home page here a second, let's go here. So other lists that I can run Dux-Soup against. So for example, I can run Dux-Soup against a list of people who've reacted to a post. So maybe there's a post here. I want to say, yeah, run Dux-Soup against here. Dux-Soup says ready at my service. I can now run my activity against here. And this is a really good one for doing just visiting, because you can then say, great, these people have reacted to a post that I've liked as well, and I want to gather their details. So you can get Dux-Soup to run your visits only against people who've reacted to a post. Maybe it's particularly relevant to your industry or something like that, and you're wanting to make sure that you're gathering information who've reacted to that. So the likes is a really good one to run Dux-Soup against. Other lists you can run against, which let's go to a university. If you go to a university or college or anywhere where there's an alumni page, if you go to the actual page, wait for this to load, and I go to the alumni section, I can then add all of my filters here. There we go. I can choose my filters here and say I'm only interested maybe people who are living, I don't know, in say Australia. Why not? I can now run Dux-Soup against this list here, and this just gives me a list of people who've studied there. You can add all sorts of filters there with regard to years, where they work, etc. Lots of other options there. Similarly, if you go to the company page, you can run Dux-Soup against a company page as well. We go to this particular page here, and we go to, again, the people list. This is a list of people who are on LinkedIn who work at this company. And then again, I can use the filters here to narrow things down. You see there, Dux-Soup at your service, ready to go. You can also do this if you're the owner of a page and you've got a list of followers, you can run Dux-Soup against there as well. So these are the different environments that you can run Dux-Soup against. Groups. Normally, if you're using regular LinkedIn, you have to be a member of a group. So you'd be a member of a group and you can go to the member list. As I mentioned earlier, if you've got Sales Navigator, let's clear all of
Sorry, Giles, sorry to interrupt. Would you be able to zoom in on your screen a little bit, please?
Of course I can.
Thank you.
Let's go. Hopefully that's a little bit better. There we go. I think that's zoomed in. There we go. Yeah. So let's get rid of the search terms I've got here a second and clear everything here. Okay. If I do a new search here now, and I just go to, for example, groups. Say I'm not a member of, for example, I don't know, design thinking, and let's get rid of those search terms there. So I can see here under design thinking that there's 7,500 people as a member of this particular group. So I can run Dux-Soup against that. That's another place that you can go with regards to defining your list of targets. Now you can also carry out a keyword search within here and then look at the other options here as well. But whenever you go in here and you look at groups, you can choose whichever user experience group. Maybe it's a finance group, maybe there's a whatever it may be that you're wanting to look for. Use the group search here to narrow things down there. Well, this user experience group, there's 46,000 people in that group. But if I then narrowed that down by maybe geography and said, right, maybe I only want to look at people in London. There we are, 1,500. Immediately you've narrowed that focus down, so you could then build a message around this particular group of people. Hey, I noticed you're based in London and you have an interest in user experiences, the user experience. So maybe they're user interface people. You would build your message around that. So that's LinkedIn focused filtering. If we now go to our Dux-Soup options here in the top right-hand corner, and I think I'll probably need to zoom in again on this one because that's quite small. So this is where you can come in. You can see here where I can build my customized message. And as I said earlier, always use the customized option, make it look personalized. So you see here, I've got a connection request message. Hi, _FN_. So using the markers there to pull out the first name of my target. I see you're also a member of the growth hacking community here on LinkedIn, and we have this in common. Would you like to connect? It's very neutral, it's very bland, I know, but it's often is enough to get people to at least visit your profile back. And then hopefully what they see on my profile will be something that they would want to engage with, and then they would go from there. So that's how you can change your message there. Just go in here and you can turn it on and off. You can include it or exclude it. That's applicable for all paid Dux-Soup users. If you've got Pro or Turbo. Turbo, you can of course build a campaign around, but I'm not going to spend too much time on that now. And this is where you then all have your other options. And these options down here basically follow the rules of LinkedIn. So I'll give you a couple of examples. You can only send in-mails if you're using Sales Navigator or Recruiter. You can only follow a profile using standard LinkedIn. You can only endorse skills of first-degree connections in standard LinkedIn. So if you're visiting profiles in Sales Nav, you can't endorse them. So those are all sort of, think about what you're doing when you're running Dux-Soup, what sort of a list it is that you're running it against, and you will have some limitations because it's the user interface that limits the functionality here. So you can exclude profiles with fewer than maybe, I don't know, 100 connections. You can get Dux-Soup to ignore them if they have under a certain number. So that's a way to make sure that you're reaching out to the right quality of people, hopefully. And then under the skipping options here, and this is what I talked about earlier. So here you have lots of different options. Here we got, for example, if they're not a premium subscriber or if they're not open link member. Open link members are the people you can send free in-mails to. Look at the webinar from back in end of April, beginning of May for in-mails. If you're a premium subscriber with in-mail possibilities, have a look at that webinar. I've had loads of positive feedback about that. It's a really, really powerful feature. Influencers open to work, blah, blah, blah. There's quite a lot here. If you've tagged people before using LinkedIn, you can use those tags to make sure that you're ignoring them. The regex skipper, that's the thing I was talking about earlier with the markers to make sure that you're skipping certain keywords. And the keywords it would skip here. So if, for example, see Microsoft and IBM, if that text appears here, that's the text that it looks against in order to evaluate that. Same in Sales Navigator. The history skipper, it's pretty self-explanatory, the history skipper. And then finally, what I want to talk about here is the throttling. So here, this is where you decide the speed of the robot, how quickly it's going to carry out your chosen activities, and then your daily limits. So here under the daily limits, this is where you, depending on whether you've got a paid account or not, you choose how many visits it's going to carry out per day, and then how many connection requests and direct messages. Direct messages is messages to first degree connections or in-mails. So that could be follow-up messages if you've got Turbo. Hopefully all that terminology is making sense to you. And connection requests, of course, is connection request. But every connection request and every direct message involves a visit. So make sure that your connection requests and your direct messages, that number is not higher than your visits number, because otherwise it will stop at a certain point if you're carrying out visits as well. But think about all of these factors when it comes to kicking off your lead generation activities with Dux-Soup and LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a phenomenal repository of data, and if you can get your targeting right, if you can focus on the right sorts of people, and you've got your throttling setting up, your skipping rules are good, and then your messaging is good, there's absolutely no reason at all why you can't turbocharge, if you like, your lead generation activities with regard to your outreach. It's a combination of all these things and the basics, getting the basics right, making sure your profile's up to date, making sure you're visible, making sure you're active on the platform. All of these things contribute to really making sure that your LinkedIn profile, your LinkedIn lead gen activities are good. I was speaking to somebody a couple of weeks ago. They had a brand new LinkedIn account. They had 0 first degree connections. So the first thing you need to do if you're in that situation is build up a base of people, because you can't grow your network until you've got a network. So even if it's, connecting with friends, connecting with a couple of colleagues, people you've worked with in the past, that immediately organically builds what you can see in LinkedIn. So all of these things are worth thinking about. So that was the demo. So the process, think about the process when it comes to tripling your leads on LinkedIn. Decide on your strategy. Your strategies, is it visit? Is it visiting, connecting? Is it enrolling? Is it something else? Think about that process. Make sure it's repeatable, because if it's a repeatable process, you can measure it. The next one, yeah, search, filter, filter, and filter. You can never filter too much. If you're wanting to really be keen on making sure you're looking at the right targets, I really can't emphasize that enough. If your process is stable and your process is repeatable, you can then test and measure, refine, test and measure again. You can assess the impact of each change you make along the way. So that's really important as well. Please be active on LinkedIn. Don't just sit there, connect, because you're not doing anything there. If you're active on LinkedIn, if you're participating in groups, if you're responding to posts, if you're just reacting to posts, it all helps with your levels of visibility. And you can use Dux-Soup to streamline all of this. So yeah, think about all of these things as you go through your things. That's everything I was going to present today. So very quickly, before we get on to the Q&As, how to build the perfect database from LinkedIn. In 2 weeks' time, I will be back home, and rather than my unusual location. Yeah, we'll be talking about what data you can grab from LinkedIn using Dux-Soup. So what data is available, what can you do with that data? And we'll talk about that next time, and that's going to be applicable to both to both Pro and Turbo users. Of course, Turbo, there's more possibilities, but Pro, you can also grab all of that data still, a lot of that data, I should say. So that's what's coming up in 2 weeks' time. And yeah, questions, Jen, do we have any?
Yes, we have a couple of questions. One of the questions would be if you could explain a little more on how to interact with contacts that haven't chosen to accept your connection request and are actually not joining a drip campaign. Would you be able to give examples how to interact with people who do not accept your connection requests? So I presume it's in mails.
Yeah, so if you're sending a connection request to somebody, it sits with them until they respond to it, or until you withdraw it and you wait 3 weeks after that withdrawal. So when let's just go show my screen again. So if I just go to here, my sent connection request. So these people here have got connection requests from me. If I was to withdraw one of these connection requests, so for example, that one, there you are. If I withdraw this connection request, I can't resend that to that person for 3 weeks. So if I withdraw that, now I can no longer send that person another connection request for 3 weeks. If they don't engage with you through your connection request, yeah, maybe you need to cycle back round. You need a process to be able to say, yeah, you withdraw it, and then you wait another month or whatever, and then you come round again and visit them again. Once they've got a connection request, you can't send them a second connection request. You may be able to send them an in-mail. I've not checked that one, but yeah, perhaps you can send them an in-mail. I believe you can actually. So sending an in-mail may be a possibility. But yeah, if they're not, maybe they don't log on to LinkedIn very often. Maybe they're just not particularly active on the platform. It's up to you how you position that. I was actually talking to somebody about 3 weeks to a month ago, who had enrolled people in the campaign like a year ago. Since then, that individual has now changed jobs a couple of times, and he's enrolling them now into a new campaign. A lot more people are now accepting. So people he'd enrolled before are now, and they hadn't accepted, are now hitting another campaign and accepting against that campaign. So it's quite interesting sometimes to see how these things go. So it becomes cyclical depending on the timing of these things. Of course, everyone's a moving target in many ways, because it depends on many other things, where they're based, what their life situation is, what their employment status is, etc. So just because it fails once, just because you don't hit the mark straight away, that doesn't mean that maybe in 2, 3, 4, 6 months time you can't try again.
Thank you. Another question would be, please, could you show us how to visit the connections of your first level connections, so second degree connections?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways you can do that. Let's just show the easy way here in regular LinkedIn. If I just carry out a search, maybe I'm just looking for, let's have a think. I'm afraid, Jin, just because you're my colleague. So if I go to Jin here, I can see here, if I see here that she's got 500 plus connections, I can just go in there, and here I can see that I'm then looking at second degree connections with my colleague. So that way I can immediately see those people there. So yeah, I can put in another connection here if I had someone else that I wanted to. Let's put in Jan Janssen. There we go. So if I want to see the secondary connections with regards another of my colleagues, then you can see here that way. So here under the search, you can just get, depending on, you can go first and second. So maybe I'm not interested in the first degree of the people I'm directly connected to. I'm looking at the people I'm indirectly connected to via my first degree connection here. You can also do this in Sales Navigator as well. And you can do that via, let's go to here. Yeah, so here under, let's get rid of these other, let's clear everything there a second. Oh, there we go, connections of. So I can here type in, for example, my Jan Janssen here, and I can see here, oh, it's because I'm only looking for web developer and designer. There we go, let's get rid of that. Should now update. I might have to just open a new search. That might be easier. Let's do lead filters. Connections of Jan Janssen. There we go. Sales result there. So that way I can look at it there, here in Sales Navigator, or indeed in regular LinkedIn here. And then yeah, you choose whether it's the second degree or maybe even the third degree. So then you get to see that step beyond there as well. So all of these things are searched that way, and these are lists as because they are just search results. That's how you can do that.
Thank you very much. Another question. I was not sure if Dux-Soup can do that. Can I get Dux-Soup to visit the profiles of people who have subscribed to my LinkedIn newsletter? I'm not sure if Dux-Soup runs on that type of list.
Well, I think we'll need to check, because I haven't got a newsletter list to be able to look at. We'll have to look into that one, I think, Jen, if you could make that, because yeah, I don't have a newsletter that I can look at the list of to see if it's a pop-up like the likes. Let's go back home here. If it's a pop-up list like this, then it almost certainly can, but it's worth double checking that. Certainly page followers it can do. So if you've got a list of, if you are administrator for a page, it can certainly do a list of page followers. But I don't know a list of newsletter subscribers. Sorry, we'll have to refer back to you if you could do that for us, Jin, and we'll follow up accordingly.
Sure, I will do that. That's it. No more questions from us. Thank you very much.
Great. Another plug. In 2 weeks' time, what data can you get out of LinkedIn? I'll leave that on there just for a second. So get yourself subscribed. Even if you can't make it, you subscribe. You register for it. You'll still get the recording. So that's always worth doing. And it's always made available, of course, via our website and our YouTube channel. Booster and technical calls. I am working limited hours at the moment because I'm theoretically on holiday, but there are still some time slots available for booster and technical sessions. So yeah, feel free to book those via the website. And that just leaves me to say thank you ever so much for everyone joining us today during the summer months. And I wish everybody who may be enjoying their summer holidays a very pleasant time. And I'll leave it to Jin to sign off.
Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us today, and hopefully we will see you on our next webinar. See you very soon. Bye-bye.